Alright, so a couple of days ago I showed you guys the first slate of advertisements that John Fetterman was unveiling to challenge Dr. Oz for that Senate seat up in Pennsylvania, and today I got a clip for you guys of John Fetterman going on Fox News to basically give his best attempt at railing against John Fetterman and his scary radical socialist agenda. So let's go ahead and watch this clip. It's only a minute long, but goddamn, this is just jam-packed with some of the most deranged and incoherent conservative talking points. So let's just go ahead and jump into this.
And they're quite stark. I want to defend hardworking families from intrusive big government, such as we've seen from Joe Biden for the last year and a half. Fetterman actually pulls Biden to the left. He's further left of Joe Biden. And part of it is he doesn't understand the private sector because he hasn't worked in the private sector. So, for example, when we spend trillions of dollars on and throwing money at problems at the federal government, which causes inflation, he says it's not enough. I want to stop that reckless spending. He's crippled our energy industry with policies that don't make any sense. I'm for all of the above energy solutions. But the one that's coming up a lot now is he's soft on crime. He's on the parole board. He wants 1/3 of all prisoners, including violent offenders, to be released. Our streets aren't safe. As I just described, Philadelphia broke the all-time record for murders. People don't like what he's talking about. They don't like open borders and sanctuary cities, which he's pushed for. I am for securing our border and cutting off the cartel for running a human trafficking operation and running narcotics into our country. These are clear issues that polarize the nation, but Fetterman is so far to the left of Biden that the rest of the population, they've got me to pick.
Okay, so listen, again, that was absolutely jam-packed with a bunch of different shit, so I'm going to try my best to address everything that he said there, but really the best part of it was at the end where he's trying to imply that John Fetterman is like radically to the left of Joe Biden. I think he definitely is on some issues, right? He's in favor of legalizing marijuana, he's in favor of single-payer healthcare, significantly tackling climate change in a more substantial way than Joe Biden, so there's definitely policies you could point to that would more align John Fetterman with like a Bernie Sanders style politician, which I'm also going to show you a tweet from Dr. Oz where he does exactly that. But in a general sense, no, John Fetterman is not some crazy radical Marxist or anything like that. Basically, all of the main policies that he's running on right now are overwhelmingly popular and supported by the vast majority of not only the American people generally, but also Pennsylvania voters specifically. So, that's why Dr. Oz uses these general vague terms to attack John Fetterman instead of getting into the actual details and the substance of what he's actually running on. But some of the different things that he was saying there, right? We had the intrusion by Democrats on our civil liberties and rights, and how Dr. Oz is going to oppose government or big government getting involved in your life and your day-to-day existence. Well, I mean, here's Dr. Oz on one of those exact subjects. I mean, he says here, the court is right. Roe was wrongfully decided. Abortion laws should be left up to the American people and their elected representatives. I look forward to supporting pro-life legislation that saves innocent lives in the United States Senate. Well, it's not going to be saving any innocent lives. If anything, overturning Roe v. Wade and making abortion access damn near impossible for women across this country is only going to make it more dangerous. You're not going to actually significantly lower the amount of abortions. You're just going to make it radically more dangerous for women to go and get abortions, and you are going to end up killing women. So, you want to talk about saving lives. Keeping abortion legal is one way that you could actually go about doing that. And on top of that, you also have the added layer of hypocrisy here with Dr. Oz saying he doesn't support big government intrusion in your life while actively supporting the government literally getting to control women's bodies. So complete contradiction there. Also would be interesting to hear what his opinion is on some of the extreme reactionary legislation that we've seen proposed by state legislatures, including Pennsylvania, but all around the country. Just one of the most egregious bills that I've talked about recently was from Ohio, where the GOP passed a bill aiming to root out suspected transgender female athletes with genital inspection. Okay, the same exact party that is now trying to portray gay and trans people as if they're trying to groom your children, they want to do genital inspection. And oh, by the way, Ohio just so happens to have literally one single trans female athlete who is participating in sports at this level. Okay, so they passed this piece of legislation, obviously for reactionary and bigoted reasons, that only actually would apply to one single athlete within the entire Ohio state. All right, and they're using this as an opportunity to do genital inspections on children. Okay, so tell me again, which party is the one that is filled with groomers? Okay, again, complete hypocrisy and completely ridiculous. Other things that he mentioned in there was, something having to do with inflation-inducing spending and how Joe Biden passing stimulus bills is directly what led to inflation. I've talked about this a million times on this channel, but just as a reminder, here from Matt Stoller, corporate profits drive 60% of inflation increases. Higher prices aren't just a result of supply chain chaos or government spending. Inflation is being driven by the pricing power and higher profits of corporations, costing $2,100 per American. Okay, so you want to talk about inflation? Why don't you look to the private sector that you were just, getting on your hands and knees and bending over for? I mean, it's the private sector that has been driving literally the majority of inflation. So no, it wasn't just due to big government spending, which even if you want to talk about the trillions and trillions of dollars that was put into the American economy at the beginning of COVID in stimulus, the vast disproportionate amount of that went to these same goddamn corporations that are turning around and price gouging Americans while they're seeing record profits. So even on that front, the answer to too high government spending would be to stop giving billions and trillions of dollars in handouts to prop up the stock market and to bail out these billion-dollar profitable corporations. It wouldn't be to impose austerity on working class people, which is exactly what conservatives and somebody like Dr. Oz wants to do. Okay, when he talks about tackling inflation, he's not talking about going after these corporations. He's not talking about reducing our military spending or reducing the amount that we give to billion-dollar corporations. He's talking about imposing austerity on working class people. So again, completely fucking ridiculous. Another thing that he pointed out there was he just vaguely, in the weirdest way imaginable, said that John Fetterman is like anti-US energy, which is also for many different reasons false. He said something about like him tripling our energy or something like that, which I don't even know what the fuck he meant by that, but assuming he's generally being critical of John Fetterman for supporting tackling climate change, investing in renewable energy. Number one, John Fetterman, I think, doesn't even go far enough on energy policy. He does support fracking, which I think is absolutely atrocious and, is in line more so with somebody like Dr. Oz's energy policy, but he does support, generally the framework of the Green New Deal. He does support transitioning away from fossil fuel usage, which, by the way, would actually be a net benefit, not only to the American people, because we wouldn't be beholden to authoritarian governments like Russia and Saudi Arabia, etc., for our oil production, but on top of that, investing in renewable energy would give us like an added benefit of national security, if you want to look at it from that framework, as somebody like Dr. Oz would obviously love to be doing. You want to talk about energy independence, the way that you do that is to not be relying on, dead dinosaurs in the fucking ground that destroy the environment when you have to dig them up and involve them in our energy production. If you wanted actual energy independence, it would mean independence from fossil fuels and also independence from these same fossil fuel corporations who are currently price gouging the American people. And the way that you would go about doing that is by, number one, decommodifying our energy sector, and number two, again, following more in line with John Fetterman's policy of substantially investing in renewable energy. So again, completely ridiculous on this front. But finally, he finished off there with a critique of John Fetterman's positions on criminal justice reform, which again was wildly inconsistent. So I'm doing my best here in interpreting the vague numbers that he was throwing out there. I have absolutely no idea what he's referencing in terms of John Fetterman supporting releasing 1/3 of violent and non-violent prisoners within Pennsylvania. No fucking idea where he got that number from, but just to give some basics on the current state of criminal justice in the state of Pennsylvania, here from prisonpolicy.org, they say rates of imprisonment have grown dramatically in the last 40 years. So Pennsylvania, seeing obviously record numbers of people who are incarcerated. Is this leading to better results for the people of Pennsylvania? Is this leading to a reduction in crime? Obviously not, because the answer to crime in this country has much more to do with people's material economic conditions than it has to do with how many people you are throwing in prison or how many cops you have on the beat, or how much money you are flooding into police budgets. It has a lot more to do with those material conditions, but nonetheless, as pointed out here, record levels of people in jail and prison within Pennsylvania. They also point out comparisons to other OECD nations here. So, just absolutely laughable, ridiculous to think that the problem right now with the US or the Pennsylvania criminal justice system is that we don't have enough people sitting in prison. Just look at the numbers here. Incarceration rates, comparing Pennsylvania and founding NATO countries. So, Pennsylvania is right up here with basically the average of the United States at 659 2009 incarceration rates per 100,000 people. And then you go look at like the next highest country, and it's the United Kingdom with barely a fraction of that, like what, 1/5 of that number. Then you got Portugal, Canada, France, Belgium, Italy, etc. I mean, look at the numbers, man. I mean, the problem is very obviously not that we don't have enough people sitting in prison. It's the exact precise opposite of that number. I mean, is the United Kingdom, is Canada, France, are these just like hellholes where criminals are running around rampant and there's lawlessness and chaos? No, of course it's not, because they take a different approach, albeit with its own flaws. They take a slightly different approach to our policy of just rampant mass incarceration, mostly or at least disproportionately for non-violent offenders, which is another statistic that we're going to get to here in a second, which kind of just implodes his entire argument. But again, of course, no surprises here. Pennsylvania incarceration rates by race and ethnicity, obviously disproportionately Hispanic and Black. Pennsylvania people are incarcerated, no surprises there. This is how the U.S. criminal justice system has operated for decades and decades, really since its inception in this country. But just to really hammer it home in terms of that number that he floated out there, I wasn't able to find literally any sources whatsoever in terms of John Fetterman supporting releasing 1/3 of the Pennsylvania prison population. But if you want to get specific on this, they say here from the Sentencing Project, I don't have the specifics on Pennsylvania's number, but if you look at the averages among U.S. states, and we know that Pennsylvania is right up in there with the averages of the United States in incarceration rates, they say here nearly half, roughly 46% of people incarcerated in state prisons in 2015 were convicted of non-violent drug, property, or public order crimes. Okay, emphasis on the non-violent aspect of this. Okay, so even if he was to release 1/3 of Pennsylvania's prison population, well, that wouldn't match up even to the average across the United States of 46% of people sitting in prison for non-violent offenses, just rotting away and completely eviscerating any future prospects that they have, to re-enter into society in a productive way, to be able to get good, sustainable jobs, etc. I mean, you want to talk about these statistics? Well, how about you start with the fact that you are imprisoning large chunks of your entire population for non-violent drug offenders, which is something that John Fetterman actually supports overturning. He does support legalizing marijuana. He supports expunging the convictions of non-violent drug offenders, which is an absolutely great and popular policy that would be much more effective than the current status quo, which Dr. Oz seems to be completely content with. But just to read it off from John Fetterman's website directly to give you a little bit of a perspective in terms of his positions on criminal justice reform, they say here, as Lieutenant Governor, John has transformed the position and made a bully pulpit of the office advocating for economic justice and criminal justice reform. Weeks after taking office, John embarked on a listening tour of all 67 counties, something that no sitting lieutenant governor has ever done, to engage with Pennsylvanians about legalizing marijuana. And in 3 months, the historic tour saw over 10,000 people turn out in person and tens of thousands more engage online. Following John's final report on recommendations, the governor announced his support for legalization for the first time. And as the chair of the Pennsylvania Board of Pardons, John has led the fight to give second chances to non-violent longtime inmates and free those who have been wrongfully convicted. He has taken numerous steps to overhaul the clemency process in Pennsylvania, including eliminating all fees associated with applying for a pardon. Seems like a great thing. Making the pardons application more user-friendly and working to move the application process to online. And they say under John's tenure, the board has recommended more applicants for commutation than any lieutenant governor in decades. So again, you can try to portray that as some radical, crazy proposal, but what's really crazy is the current status quo, that the United States has, roughly 4% of the world's total population and roughly 24% of the world's prison population. That is radical. That is completely out of the ordinary, and obviously it's not enhancing public safety. And on top of that, you want to go back to government intrusion on people's day-to-day, civil rights and liberties in this country. Talk about police. I mean, they're the biggest infringers on people's rights in this country that exist, basically. So, you want to talk about, big government as an issue in this country, go directly to the police, specifically in the city you were talking about there in Philadelphia, which has been proposing record police budgets, which are not effective in any way, shape, or form at reducing crime in the long run. So not only are his policies absurd, but they're also ineffective and, delusional at some level. But Just to finish us off here with another perspective in terms of just who Dr. Oz really is, he posted this tweet a couple days ago, which I think is awesome for a number of different reasons. He says, "Fact," in all caps, and then says, "John Fetterman is a radical liberal who supports Bernie Sanders. That should tell you everything you need to know about what kind of senator he would be." So listen, I mean, I think that John Fetterman is actually to the right of Bernie Sanders on some positions, but if this is what your opposition wants to paint you as, then fucking lean into it. I mean, I don't know what else to say about that. Bernie Sanders has been very consistently for like almost a decade in a row been labeled as the most popular senator in the entire country. His approval rating consistently rates above Donald Trump, Ron DeSantis, Joe Biden, any number of other politicians that you want to compare him to. So, you know, if this is Dr. Oz's strategy, painting him as some sort of a radical Bernie Sanders style Democrat, or somebody who is going to support the radical policies like universal health care, investing in climate change, reforming our broken criminal justice system, investing in working class Americans and reducing the amount of bailouts we're giving to billion-dollar corporations. If that's what you're trying to paint him as, then keep it going, because this is only going to make people like John Fetterman more. And also, I think it's funny that with the advertisements that we were covering the other day of John Fetterman, how all of his advertisements, all of the substance within those was focused on who he is as a person, what he is going to be doing, what policies he supports. And you got Dr. Oz coming out here and basically just talking about nothing that he supports, being extremely vague in his policy prescriptions, while basically making the entirety of his focus on how terrible and radical and scary John Fetterman is. So it shows you really who among the two people in this race are actually going to provide substantive change that Pennsylvania voters and Americans in general are looking for in a moment like this.